What does it really mean to be unshakable? It's not just a matter of money, it's a state of mind. When you're truly unshakable, you have an unwavering confidence amidst the storm. It's not that nothing upsets you, we all get hooked at times, but you just don't stay there. Nothing rattles you for any length of time. This state of mind allows you to be a leader, not a follower, to be the chess player, not the chess piece, to be one of the few who do, not the many who talk.
Welcome. I'm Richard Bradley, the editor-in-chief of Worth Magazine, and I'm here with Tony Robbins. He's the co-author of a new book called Unshakable, Your Financial Freedom Playbook, Creating Peace of Mind in a World of Volatility. Tony, thank you. And I want to get right into the book. You talk in most of this book about the secrets to building wealth and how to achieve financial freedom, and it's incredibly effective and very powerful. But at the end, you take some time to talk about the meaning of something that you call true wealth.
Yes.
And I'm sitting there, I'm reading along, all about building financial wealth, and then all of a sudden you throw me this curveball. Wait, financial wealth versus true wealth. What does true wealth mean to you?
First of all, I would have felt remiss if I wrote an entire book on building wealth and I didn't talk about psychological, emotional, spiritual wealth, because what do we want when we say we want money? You want little pieces of paper with pictures of deceased notables? I don't think so, right? You want what you think money's going to give you, freedom or security or opportunities for your family or the ability to contribute to other people. I mean, money can be portable power. Money can be a lot of things, but it's whatever we make it up. I mean, it's almost like a shapeshifter. Whatever you throw on money, it's what it becomes. I always tell people money just makes you, it doesn't change people. It makes you more of what you are. If you're mean and you got a lot of money, you got more to be mean with. If you're truly generous and that's your nature and you have more money, you'll be more generous. I mean, there's more resources that are coming through you. But to me, really what we're talking about in real wealth is what is it that makes you feel truly abundant? What makes you feel totally alive? What's life on your terms look like? Because everyone's different. Some people's idea of wealth is a beautiful home with a white picket fence and 3 beautiful children. Some people's idea of extraordinary life is writing beautiful poetry or growing a garden or building a multi-billion-dollar business and employing people and producing resources. There's no right or wrong. The question is, what's going to light you up? Because I can't tell you how many people, including billionaires, I interviewed 50 of them over a period of 3.5 years, and I would not say they all aren't happy, because that's totally not true. You can be rich and happy, you can be poor and you can be happy. Problems are not, I always tell people, problems and happiness have no relationship. You can have tons of problems and be happy.
You can be rich and unhappy.
Exactly right. You can do either one. That does happen. So really we're talking about true wealth is between your ears. It's your brain and your heart working together, and it's defining what does life on your terms look like, and then putting a plan in place that really makes that happen, and then making sure you're truly enjoying along the way. Because to me, there's nothing worse than an angry rich man or woman. You want to slap them. They got every resource on the planet, but the challenge is we all have a 2 billion-year-old brain, and it's basically not trained to make you happy. Your brain is trained to make you survive. Right. So survival means I got to look for what's wrong all the time, be prepared for it so I can fight it or flight from it. And in reality, we don't have a saber-toothed tiger to fight off anymore. So now people get stressed, even when they have money, because they think about what are people thinking of me? Or do I have enough money? When, the average American who's in dire straits, and I don't want to see anybody in dire straits. You know what? I feed 100 million people a year for the last 2 years. I'm going to feed 1 billion people through my partnership at Feeding America over the next 8 years. I care. But I also know that if you're in poverty in this country, you're in the 1% of financial people. You're not the 99%, you're 1% of the world. So the resources are available, but what we don't do is appreciate it enough. We let little stuff stress us out and big stuff stress us out. So in the book, the last chapter of the book is how do you organize your life so you don't just wait till someday when you have a certain amount of money and then you're happy, because a lot of people get that amount of money and then they go, is it still enough? Or what don't I have? Or what's happening with my family? They still find a way to be stressed. So money's not the solution, it's a vehicle. And if we use it right, it can enhance the quality of life. But we've also got to control these two things, the head and heart, in order to have the quality of life that we really deserve.
So presumably that situation of having achieved true wealth is going to be different for everyone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we all have our own idea of what an extraordinary quality of life is going to be, what that financial freedom is going to help us to do and to achieve. So how do we figure that out? Is there a universal formula that people can apply to sort of help them get to that point where now that we've helped them achieve some financial independence and financial security, how do they themselves figure out what true wealth means for them?
I think most people, if you sat down and said, what does life look like on my terms? What would my ideal vision for my life be like? And you took 5 or 10 minutes, I do with people all the time. Most people with just a little bit of prodding or a little bit of state change, where they're not in their head, most people can start to list out what they'd want for their life. But what I found is life on your terms, extraordinary life, whatever it is, you need 2 master skills to really achieve that quality of life and sustain it. Like anybody can get rich. Staying rich is a different thing. And when I say rich, I don't just mean financial. I mean emotional, spiritual, physical, right? So the 2 skills are, number 1 is the science of achievement. The science of achievement, I call it science of achievement because it is a science. Anyone who applies the principles of science can get the same result. So there's a science to wealth. When I wrote Money Master the Game and now Unshakable, I said, okay, instead of me doing this from my perspective, I've worked with Paul Tudor Jones, one of the top 10 financial traders in the history of the world, a guy that in 1987, when the market dropped 22% in a day, made 200% for his clients that year. I mean, I know a lot, but what if I go to everybody? What if I dig under everybody and find out what it is? And what I found was, all these people invested in different ways, but there were certain fundamental things in common. We call them the core 4 in this book here, and I began to share those, and I started to apply them for myself. Same thing with health. Everyone is biochemically unique, right? But at the same time, there's certain fundamentals that you and I, while we're unique, if we violate those rules, it's a science. You're gonna have disease or low energy, dis-ease in your body, right? If you align with them, you're gonna have abundance of energy. You're gonna have passion, you're gonna have intensity. You're gonna have that physical vitality that can make you even more successful. So there's a science to achievement. And if you said, what does it take to achieve? Almost anybody watching this, my guess is an overachiever. It's the kind of person who wants to read a book like this, who goes to a seminar. They're always looking for the edge because that's what made them the best in the world at what they do, or really great at what they've done. But there are 3 fundamentals I can tell you at the most basic level. Is if you're watching, if you're listening, think about this. Think about something, and maybe in your own life, Richard, think of what's something in your life today that once was a dream or a goal or seemed impossible. And I think all of us have that. So it could have been something as simple as, growing up and maybe a car represented, especially for a lot of guys, a car was that first symbol of I've achieved something, at a certain level, right? And you got that car and it seemed impossible. Or the job, or starting your own business, or a relationship. Mm-hmm. Can you think of one in your own life, something in your own life that was once seemed impossible, but is now, part of your life?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what was it, can I ask?
Well, I think it was probably writing a book.
Yes.
When I was a kid, I was a big reader, and I always dreamed of writing a book, and I never quite believed that I could do it. I've subsequently written 3.
That's awesome.
Still can't quite believe that I did it, but it's always an inspiring thing for me. And so I look back and I think, wow, there was no guarantee that I was ever going to do that thing that I dreamed about in childhood.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that it happened.
Well, I love that. It's a perfect example because what seemed difficult or impossible or seemed beyond, you now live. Some people now even take those things for granted. They've dreamed of having a date with this person or making love with this person. Now they're married. Good morning, good morning. There's nothing there. The law of familiarity is the thing we also have to watch out for if we want to be fulfilled, because the law of familiarity says if you're around anything enough, you tend to take it just a little bit for granted. You got that brand new car. It was so exciting. That new car smell, you drove by the plate glass windows in the bank and saw yourself there. And then you get your first scratch and your brain goes, oh my God, I can't believe this. And you're so upset, but you have to get over it. So you try to forget about it. And it's so painful. And then you get your second scratch. By the time you get your 4th scratch, it's a car.
No, that's right.
It's changed. So familiarity gets in the way of it. But what I say to people is the way you achieve, and tell me if this was true for you, I always tell people if you look at the most basic key to achievement, it's that you become obsessed about something. You start to think about it constantly. You start to desire it. In other words, you focus on it. Focus is power. Wherever focus goes, energy flows. And so most people are focused on what they don't want instead of what they do want, so they experience more of that. So if you get obsessed about something, you can't stop thinking about it. Your brain kicks into gear to try to figure out how to do that, even if you don't have a plan. I've talked to so many people and said, what's something you couldn't get out of your head? You wanted it so bad, it seemed impossible, and yet somehow it came together. The reason is there's a part of our brain, it's called the RAS, Reticular Activating System, big words, we call it RAS for short. It's the part of your brain that notices things, that there's millions of things going on around you, millions. There's pulsation in your ear, you don't think about it, to mention the skin touching your clothing, the people walking by. But the RAS only makes you look at the things that really matter most. So an example would be, if you buy a car or you buy an outfit, and suddenly you see that car outfit everywhere. Those cars and outfits were always all around you. But now your RAS says, I own one of this, it's important, so you see it everywhere. Well, the same thing's true when you say, I want this, I desire this. Your brain can start to create a plan. That's step one. Step two is really fundamental. Sometimes you get by without it, but usually it takes massive action. If you dream about it, you put your focus in it, you want it, all of a sudden your brain goes crazy, you start reading a book, you talk to people, you ask resources, you go on the web, you do the research. And if you take massive action strongly enough and you keep changing your approach when it doesn't work, if you flex your approach, you'll find what's effective. So step one is obsess, get totally focused, unleash your desire, that gives the energy. Step two is not waiting. It's massive action, keep changing your approach until you find effective execution. If you're running east looking for a sunset, I don't care how positive you are, you're not gonna see the sunset. It's the wrong strategy, right? It's just not gonna happen. So you gotta have a proven strategy, and you can get there faster, same way I've done it with these books, is saying, I could go this, or I could spend 4 years, interview 50 of the smartest people in the world, all billionaires that started with nothing, and find out what they did, and compress decades into days. That's really the purpose of everything that I do. So when you have that plan and you keep changing your approach, I always tell people, how long would you give your average kid to learn how to walk? Before you turn to the kid and said, dude, it's never gonna happen, you're not a walker, just give it up. Right? People go, you're crazy, my kid's gonna keep trying until. Well, that's really step two. You keep changing your approach until you find it. And then the third step to achievement really is, as simple as it may sound, if you're obsessed, you know what you want, you're taking massive action, maybe you modeled somebody, figure out the right action so you get there quicker, and you're executing, you still need a little grace. Some people call it luck, you could call it God, but I really believe that there's the part we do and then there's the part that comes to us. But I do know grace shows up a lot more when you do the first two steps on your own, and grace shows up a lot more when you acknowledge grace in your life, when you acknowledge that I was born in a world where I didn't have to build this internet that I can pull out of my pocket the answer to anything on earth. I am driving on streets I didn't pave. I'm reading books I didn't have to write. That's the gift of our lives. And I think when we experience that grace, we don't just experience more achievement, but we start to experience more fulfillment.
And grace not only affects your ability to get there, but it affects what you do and how you live once you are there.
It really determines the quality of your life, because unless you live in a state of gratitude, I did an interview with Sir John Templeton, who, as you know, is one of the first billionaire investors and just a brilliant man. He came from nothing, and he donated, I think it was $750, they still do it, the Templeton Fund, I think it's $750 million a year. It's bigger than the Nobel Fund that he donates. And one day I asked him, I said, what is the secret to wealth? And he looked at me, paused, this big smile, and his eyes got really bright, like they always did. And he said, Tony, it's what you teach. I said, well, I teach a lot of things, which thing? And he said, gratitude. He said, because you and I, Tony, know billionaires that are miserable, and it's because they're not grateful for what they have. And we both know people have no money, seemingly, but they're so grateful for their health, for their husband, for their wife, for their children. They're so grateful to God, they're so grateful for their life that they're rich. So I think it starts with that gratitude. It starts with that connection to grace, as simplistic as that sounds. And so it's not enough just to have your financial plan. You can have all the money and be miserable. Let's have the money and be really rich emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually.
Well, and it's hard to imagine somebody becoming financially rich, becoming even, say, a billionaire, but if they lack that element of grace, it's hard to imagine them actually being happy.
Well, you bring up what I think is the second most important skill in life, right? To have extraordinary life on your terms, science of achievement. Second skill, the art of fulfillment. It's art, not science. And the reason I call that art, not science, is there are specific rules of the game to make money or lose money. There's rules of the game to get healthy, right? When it comes to fulfillment, we're all totally unique human beings. And a story I often share with people, because it was so stunning to me personally, a great example of this is, like, you look in the environment, you look in the forest, you'll see what God or the universe loves, whatever your belief structure is. It's diversity. Everything's diverse. Nothing's the same, right? The same thing's true with people. You, and even your wife or your son or your daughter or your best friend, even though you love each other, different things are going to fulfill you. And if you don't know what fulfills you, and you're succeeding. I always tell people success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And I get the calls so often from, the CEO, from the Grammy winner, the Oscar winner, who achieved all they want, and then their brain went, is this all there is? Because they achieved, but they weren't fulfilled. But different things fulfill us. I'll tell you a fun example. Steve Wynn's a dear friend of mine who built most of Las Vegas, right? Just absolute genius and a big part of Macau, gambling business. He's just an amazing human being. And we're dear friends. And one day I get a phone call and he says, it's my birthday, where are you? And I said, I'm in Sun Valley, Steve, and Sun Valley, Idaho. And we both have ski homes there. And he says, I'm in Sun Valley. He said, come on over, let's celebrate. I said, awesome, I'm on my way. He goes, listen, when you come, I want to show you this painting that I've got. He said, Tony, this painting I have coveted for more than a decade. I forget the number of years, but he said, I bought it for myself for my birthday. And he said, I outbid everybody at Sotheby's. I paid $86 million for this painting. And I'm like, oh my God. The minute he said this, my brain's like picturing, what is this Renaissance painting on, the Mona Lisa? What is this, right? Some religious artifact. I don't know what it's gonna be, but it's gonna be gorgeous. So I said, I'm coming over. So I come over to the house and he says, take a look. And I look on the wall and it's an orange square. Now this orange square, I don't know if you've ever done this before. You go to an art show or something and you go, it's a blue square, and you go like, how much is that? They go, $10 million. It's $86 million. And so I look to him teasingly and facetiously and I say, you know what? Give me $100 and 20 minutes, I can duplicate this thing. and it's called a Rothko. He goes, no, Tony, this is a Rothko. And he explains to me. And the reason I tease him about it is, to me, it's an orange square. To him, it's worth $86 million of fulfillment.
It makes him happy.
He's so sophisticated that every brushstroke has a meaning to him. For me, it's a square. So I'm not making fun of him, I'm making fun of me. We all have something different. What one person's orange splotch is somebody else's ultimate, desire. So you've got to find what fulfills you.
But in the book, you also tell the unfortunate story of Robin Williams.
Well, it's just such a good point. I was trying to think what would be a cautionary tale that people could relate to. So over the last year, I've been speaking everywhere in the world. I've been, in Australia, Sydney, Australia. I've been in Beijing. I've been in Tokyo. I've been in LA. I've been all over the world, Peru. And all the places I go on, I ask people a simple question. I say, how many of you in this room loved Robin Williams? I don't say liked him. I say, if you liked him, don't raise your hand. But if you really love this guy, even though you didn't know him, right? 98% of the room raises their hand. I mean, all over the world, right?
He's a beloved guy.
Totally beloved guy. Tens of thousands of people everywhere, right? So I say, okay, here's my question. Was he an overachiever? Was he a master of the science of achievement? And most people nod their head and say, well, let's look at it. Everyone goes to Hollywood thinking they're going to be a star. Almost nobody does. He decided he was going to be a TV star. He was going to have his own show. He did it. Then he decided, I'm going to have the #1 show. He did it. And some people are old enough to remember the name Mork and Mindy. That was it, right? Then he said, you know what? I want to have the most magnificent family I love and loves me. And he did it. Then he said, I want to make more money than I could spend. And he did it. Then he said, I want to make movies. TV's easy. I want to make movies. Then he said, I want to win an Academy Award, but Richard, for not being funny, which is his #1 skill. And he did it. He won a dramatic, Academy Award. And then he hung himself. I mean, how do you explain that? I mean, here's a man who's loved by tens of millions of people all over the earth. I mean, really loved them. He lit everybody up except himself. And he left so many people shocked, and worse than that, his children and his wife, you can only imagine what they've been through. And he was a good man, a really good man. But he suffered for decades because he succeeded. But clearly the suffering was there. The suffering was why he did cocaine. It's why he drank alcohol to extreme. It's why he did the things he did. And then in the end, he had a disease, but his body was worn out. So I look at this and I say, look, I know you're not watching, you're not gonna go commit suicide, but most of us live a life where we succeed, but we're not totally fulfilled. And to me, that's a travesty. And maybe the beauty of what we can learn from Robin Williams is, when you get on an airplane, one of the first things they do is they say to you, if there's a lack of oxygen and the mask comes down, put it on your kid first. No, they say put it on yourself first. Sounds so selfish. But the reason is if you don't take care of you, you can't help your kid. Well, the same thing's true. If you can't be fulfilled, then you're not really going to be helping anybody else long term. And so my mindset has been to help people end suffering.
So, Tony, you asked me a question about my life. Let me turn the tables and put something back on you. You say in this chapter that you see so many people, maybe not to the extreme of Robbin Williams, but still, who are missing out on so much of the joy and the fulfillment that they deserve to experience. But nobody teaches us how to be happy. I mean, you try, but what's your method? How do you do it?
I think it's really simple, truthfully. To be fulfilled, there aren't hard, fast rules, right? Because we're all fulfilled by different things. But there's a couple of principles that will guide you. The first one is you got to grow. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how many millions of people love you. I don't care how great your children are. We grow or we die. It's the nature of a human being. In fact, the purpose of a goal is not to get the goal. People get the goal, like I said, and go, is this all there is? The purpose of a goal is to become more. Because what we get, as much as we get, it's never going to make us happy. Those are tools that we can use to help people, help ourselves, help our family. But what makes us happy is who we become. And so, if you grow, I always tell people, if you want to know what it takes to be happy, it's one word: progress. If you're overweight, but you just start making progress, you haven't lost it all yet, but you lose the 5 or 10, you start feeling more, you're going to be on fire. If your finances are messed up and you pick up a book or you get a coach or you get somebody and you start working towards it, even though you're not there, you see progress, you're lit up. That's because we're wired to grow, because everything in the universe grows or dies. That's not Tony Robbins' law, that's the law of the universe. But also, I really in my soul believe we grow so we have something to give. Because when you look at what makes us really happy, you can only feel so good by yourself with alcohol or drugs or sex or whatever. Music, all those are beautiful, wonderful things. But most of us, when we have a great experience that lights us up, what's the first thing we want to do? Share with somebody we love. Why? Because when you share it, it magnifies. Relationships magnify human emotions. And so for me, the real focus is showing people how to really get so that they grow and they give, they contribute beyond themselves. I'm more on fire. I wrote this whole book, and I wrote Money Master. I've spent the last, 5-6 years giving away $10 billion. I didn't make a penny from any of this, but I've been more excited about feeding 1 billion people than any freaking house or car or plane or anything else that's there, because there's just so much more meaning when it's not about just you, when your life is about something larger. But here's the challenge. I said earlier, we have this 2 million-year-old brain, right? And it's looking for what's wrong to help you survive. Right? It's always looking what's wrong. It's not going to make you happy. So for years, I've taught people how to go into a peak state, athletes, business people, presidents of countries. Because when you're in a peak state, think of it as like a high energy state where you feel extraordinary, where you're really the master of your world. When you're in that state, producing results is easy and you have tremendous energy. If you're in a low energy state and you love somebody, let's say in an intimate relationship, two people can totally love each other, but if they're frustrated, they're overwhelmed, they're stressed out, they're worried, they're in a lower energy state, then what happens in that low energy state is you'll say things and do things that'll hurt this relationship without even meaning to. Good people will say the wrong things when they're pissed off and frustrated, and you can't take it back. So I've always taught people, live in a peak state. Train yourself to be energy rich, not energy poor. Poor financially you can solve. Poor energy, you have nothing, right? And then I was in India a couple of years ago with a friend of mine. His name was Christian G. Known him for years. And he said, Tony, the whole thing you teach about peak state and energy rich versus energy poor, he goes, I believe it 100%. But he goes, I have a little twist on it language-wise. And it really pierced me when he shared it with me. He said, what if peak states versus lousy states, or energy rich versus energy poor states, what if we switch those two words for beautiful state, peak state, anything that's beautiful? It could be happiness, it could be joy, it could be creativity, it could be fun, it could be being driven, it could be hungry, like emotionally hungry, it could be grateful. Those are one states. What if every emotion you ever felt was either a beautiful state or what you call low energy, we call a suffering state? Now, you and I are overachievers. Most of our listeners are overachievers. We don't suffer, just like, overachievers don't have fear. They have stress. I always tell people stress is the achiever word for fear. You go, I'm all stressed out. How come? I got to get this done. Well, what if you don't? But I got to get it done. But what if you don't? It'll fall apart. What if it falls apart? Well, then it'll fail. What if it fails? Then I'm a failure. If I follow the trail of your stress, it'll take me to your deepest fear, right? So what I try to do with people is I try to show them that if you want to change your life completely, you got to acknowledge that you do suffer. And if you'd asked me 2 years ago, do I suffer? I would have laughed at you. Not in an ego way. I just go, are you kidding me? I have this incredible mission. I get to work with millions of people. I have 4 magnificent children. I have a wife that I adore. I'm physically fit. I'm financially free. I do not suffer. But if you take this new definition and you can be honest with yourself, I did experience stress, frustration, overwhelm, pissed off. In fact, I realized at one point, Richard, that my happiness was really cheap. All I had to do, I was reaching for it in my pocket here, it's missing. All I had to do was have my phone because, I have 31 companies. We do $5 billion in sales annually. We're in 7 radically different industries all around the world, 1,200 employees. What's the chances that right now someone is screwing up in one of those companies, i.e. not doing what I think should be done?
Reasonably high.
Yeah, like 100%. Yeah. And if I get a little text in there, sometime in that day it's gonna be there, I'll be like, and all of a sudden my happiness will be gone just because somebody didn't do what I thought they should do out of 1,200 people around the world. So, and we all do this. What are the chances that everyone you care about and everyone you interact with is gonna do what you want, the way you think they should do it, the right way all the time? 0. So if the only time we're happy is when people do what we think they should do, or we do ourselves what we're supposed to do, we're not gonna be happy very much.
I love the way you put it. If I follow the trail of your stress, it will take me to your deepest fear. That's right, because so much of us think about, we live with stress, sometimes we're proud of stress.
Yeah, you're right.
We take it for granted. But if you think of it, stress as a symptom of something that's kind of deeper that you do need to address and not necessarily something to just accept or even in a strange way be proud of.
Yeah.
Right?
Suffering.
There's some knowledge in that.
I think a lot of people, I'd be one of these in the past, that if I was suffering, i.e. if I was stressed out or frustrated or pissed off, I'd say I get stronger, I get better, my mind gets even, maybe it did, but I've learned that I can do that without the stress, and it's usually 10 times better. When you're stressed out, you limit your ability to interact with people. Plus, in a stressed out state, you're not gonna connect with your wife or your husband. You're not gonna be there for your kids because you're not present. You're in your head and the mind is running the show. And so what I show people in the book and in the chapter is, I have people write down, what are your 2 or 3 most stressful thoughts? The most consistent stressful thoughts you have. Give me one of yours if you're willing to. I'm putting you on the spot. If you want, we can cut it out of this thing. What's a stressful thought that you have? Because we all have them. Right?
Well, I suppose, let me think about that, because we all have them. I certainly have them. My most stressful thoughts?
Or one of them.
I'll lose my job.
Okay.
I have 2 wonderful kids that I'll fail them in some way. Or I think, actually, now that I think about it, the most stressful thought that I have is that something would happen to my children. That my children would get sick or hurt in some way, or something worse that I can't even talk about.
Yeah, and same thing for me, my children and my wife. I would pick the same thing, right? And so, first of all, when I do this in a room with 10,000 people, I'll have everybody write down their 2 or 3 most stressful thoughts, and then we go around the room, and I have people just read their thoughts and tell us what it is. And I'll say, who else has that thought? And you'll see 9,000 hands out of 10,000, sometimes more, raising their hand for like 90% of these. And my point is, what you call your thoughts are not your thoughts. They've been around for millions of years. If I would have told you 100 years ago, we're gonna go to the moon and back, you would have called me crazy. The term was lunatic. That's where it comes from. Or you're gonna have this little box in the future and you pull it out of your pocket and you can push a couple buttons and you could see somebody on the other side of the world and talk to them, because invisible waves are gonna be circling the earth and those waves will come into the box and you can then interact. Witchcraft, it's insane. Thoughts are invisible waves. They've been around forever. And when you get in certain states, you think one thought. When you get in other states, you think another thought. It's like turning the channel. Right. And so what I really show people in the book how to do is how to turn the channel so that you're not suffering and you're living in a beautiful state. But what does it take? Let's just quickly say it. Number 1, it takes acknowledging what's your favorite flavor of suffering. Is it worry? Is it stress? Is it anger? Is it loneliness? Is it boredom? Is it overwhelm? And then noticing what are the thoughts that trigger that and realizing it doesn't matter how much money you have, those thoughts can still make a billionaire crazy and frustrated and overwhelmed. And so what I show people to do is a process of how to let go of those thoughts. And we walk through that in the book in detail. But fundamentally, it starts with making the most important decision of your life, which is, if I would ask me up until 2 years ago, I would say it's who you spend time with, who you love. Because who you spend time with is who you become. Mm-hmm. I think it's still one of the most important decisions in life. But you can pick the right person and still do things in your head and make yourself miserable. So you really have to decide. The most important decision is, do I want to be happy? Will I commit to being happy? More important than happy. Sometimes you can be so happy you smile so much your face hurts, right? You need variety. Am I committed to living in a beautiful state even when it doesn't go my way, even when it rains on my parade, even when my biggest fear shows up. Because I can't control whether your husband or wife will live or die or get sick or leave you or get a divorce. I don't want any of that to happen to any human being. I hate suffering. I do anything I can to help people not suffer. But I can't control that. You can. There are people who have lost their arms, they've lost their sight. There have been people that have been through the most horrific experiences in life, and they found a way to still be happy because they've made the decision that life is too short to suffer. I've interviewed dozens and hundreds over the years, but dozens that have impacted my soul, that made me realize I can change this. I've just gotten used to it. I bought into the theory that this survival software that's constantly running and making you suffer, that's normal. No, that's what the mind will do. And mind has been around forever. What I'm gonna do is something different. And the way I get out of suffering, I give myself a 90-second rule. It's really simple. I say, look, if I feel myself starting to feel that stress, feeling that pissed offness or upsetness or concern or worry about my kid, whatever, I realize that's not gonna make it better. Life's too short to suffer. And then I just kind of breathe slowly, slow everything down, and I just watch the thought go by and go, look at that crazy thought. Because everybody's had crazy thoughts. Everybody's had a thought, I'm gonna kill that son of a bitch, right? And then you don't kill them because you don't believe that thought. It's the thoughts that are stressful that you believe that mess you up. When you question them, you break the pattern. And then the last thing besides the 90 seconds, and by the way, Richard, be honest, in the beginning, it should have been 4-hour rule, maybe a 4-day rule. I was not very good.
A waiting period.
Yes, but what's nice is the more I've done it's like a muscle. The more I've trained myself to do it, I can authentically tell you now, it takes a lot for something to take more than 90 seconds for me now. And the level of joy surpasses all the money you could ever have in a million years. And then the money, it's easier to even make money because you're not attached. You don't have the fears. You don't have the scarcity that people have because you feel so rich already right now. I always tell people, don't wait to be rich. What is that richness? It's abundance, it's joy, it's happiness, it's contribution, it's getting out of yourself. Because as long as we're thinking about, oh my God, I lost something, or you did something, now I have less love, less respect, less money. If I think lost less, or because you did something, or because I did something, I'm never gonna have what I want in my life. Loss, less, never. Those three thought patterns, they're the source of all suffering. And the antidote, see it for what it really is, know it's BS, and find something to appreciate. What I tell people is, if you wanna change your life overnight, I'll give you one example real fast. I'm privileged enough to have my own private jet, and it's a Global Express, so I can go to China nonstop. It's an unbelievable gift. It's having your office in the sky. I'm so grateful to God for it and all my partners and team members that I can have this privilege. But for most of my life, I obviously flew commercial, and I would fly to Australia 3 times a year, which from the East Coast is 40 hours round trip. It's like some people's idea of a work week. It's kind of crazy. And you get on, let's say in LA on the last leg, it's 14 hours on Qantas Airlines. And I remember getting on there and I get so stressed because I'm like, I'm out of touch with all 31 companies, all my employees. I gotta be here for 14 hours, and when I land, it's all gonna build up. The emails, the texts, the Slacks, all that stuff, right? And then one day I thought to myself, well, what's stressful about sitting? I mean, what a whiner you are, right, in your head. And shortly after that, I get on it because they don't have internet on the international flights, and I get on the flight on Qantas, and they announce, ladies and gentlemen, we have international internet. And people were cheering, it was like God descended into the plane, right? And I was embarrassed. I wanted to stand up and clap, I didn't, but I was feeling it inside. Like, yes, right? Thank God. 12 minutes later, 9 minutes later, whatever it really was, it goes down and it never comes up again.
That's it.
But here's what's crazy. What do you think happened to people on the plane? 10 minutes ago, it was this miracle. Now people are pissed because it's an expectation. What kind of company does this? What's wrong with the internet? And so my point is, we have become, so much of our life has become about expectation. And if your expectation isn't met, you suffer. If you trade expectation for appreciation, your whole life changes in a moment. In the middle of my stress, there's always something to appreciate. I can appreciate my health, my children, the opportunity. I have this mission. There's so many things. But if you don't change your focus, you'll let the reaction of survival software of this 2 million-year-old brain make you think your life is messed up, and you'll lose the joy that actually is there. So in the book, I give you some techniques that you can do in 2 minutes that take you out of suffering and put you right back into real wealth. And when you have that kind of abundance, your relationships prosper, your health prospers because you don't have all that stress, your joy prospers. You're rich today while you're also making your financial world be where you want it to be.
And Tony, it's one of the things that I really like about this book, Unshakable, is that you not only provide really powerful tools for financial knowledge and financial growth, but you combine them with these tools that acknowledge that money is important, but it's not everything, and it's not enough.
Yeah, it's not everything.
Right? And I think you do that within the covers of one book in about 200 pages. It's pretty remarkable, actually, right? I think people can read this book, Unshakable, and really feel empowered to take some steps in their lives, their financial lives, but also their psychological lives, their emotional lives, their whole beings.
Yeah, I really want people, listen, we're all going to suffer because that's what the mind does, but you don't have to stay there. And what people really want is joy. What they want is happiness. What they want is love. What they want is connection. What they want is to feel like their life matters. And they want to have financial freedom. If you get the financial freedom without all those other things, you're poor. If you do both, you truly are rich, and the riches will show up in the way you live your life and the way you give and the way you love and the way you're with people, and that is heaven on earth for someone who really practices it.
Well, Tony, I've really enjoyed talking about this book, Unshakable, with you. I think it's a remarkable book. It's a real contribution. Whatever your level of financial expertise is, I think there's a lot to get out of this book, and it's been a real pleasure and an honor for me to have the chance to sit here with you and Peter Mallouk and do these podcasts and try to communicate these messages that you're getting out that really can make a difference in people's lives. So thank you for that.
Well, it's been my honor. I'm grateful you took the time and energy. You're the editor of Worth. So we're both very, very grateful that you help us get this message out. And we're hoping it'll reach as many people as possible. And as you know, we're going to feed another 100 million people this year from this, at least 50 million from this book, and then I'm going to match it. So it's going to touch everybody's lives. That's a triple win is the way I like to play.
Congratulations.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Take care. Hey, it's Tony Robbins. Listen, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Unshakable podcast. It's the companion to my new book, Unshakable, Your Financial Freedom Playbook, Creating a Peace of Mind in a World of Volatility. And it's co-authored with my dear partner, Peter Mallouk. Listen, by listening to this series, along with reading the book, you'll be armed with all the essential facts and strategies you need to help transform your financial life. So if any of the ideas here you've heard today have struck a chord with you, and you're interested in getting a second opinion on your own financial plan, or create one if you don't have one, then please go to getasecondopinion.com. That's getasecondopinion.com to have a creative planning advisor take a look at your portfolio, or again, help you to create a plan. It's completely complimentary, completely free, and there's no commitment necessary. I'd also personally love it if you'd leave a review of this podcast on iTunes. I'd love to know what you thought of the program. And also, I'd love to hear any new questions you have, any takeaways you took from the podcast. And if you want to share any success stories about your own journey towards financial freedom, we'd certainly love to hear about it. For more information about my book and some more related articles, videos, and other information that can help you to create that unshakable state and achieve the financial freedom you want, go to unshakable.com and know that 100% of this book's profits are being donated to Feeding America. 45 million people in this country every night don't know where their next meal is going to come from. 17 million are children. And your contribution to this book, 100% of those profits are going to feed them. We'll feed 50 million people with this book, and we'll feed another 50 million, 100 million next year alone, just with the additional bonuses that I'm offering, the additional benefits I'm getting Feeding America as well. So thanks for being my partner, and live strong, live with passion, and we'll hear you and meet you on the next podcast.
The Unshakable podcast was produced in collaboration with wealth management firm Creative Planning. It is hosted by Richard Bradley, editor-in-chief of Worth magazine, and features business and life strategist Tony Robbins. This podcast is produced and distributed by Robbins Research International. Copyright 2017.